And welcome back, everyone, into the room. So do feel free while I'm talking to, do feel free to just say a sentence of how you're feeling, just briefly, so that I can kind of gauge where you're at and how a Dharma talk would be helpful for you. But it's a pleasure to be here. So the Tonglen practice is a Tibetan Buddhist practice, and it's sometimes it's a little complicated, sometimes it's a bit challenging, but it can be quite a profound way to make friends with your own experience. So tonight I'm talking about resilience and compassion in challenging times, or something like that. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about how living in an Indian slum and ordaining as a Buddhist nun has equipped me to face challenging times. But first, I'd just like to talk about resilience. What is resilience versus trauma? You know how cats, they're amazing. They have bodies like rubber, and they can jump from very high places and land and not break bones. Why is that? Because they are extremely relaxed as they jump, and they just use the right amount of energy and muscles engaged at the right time to land. I'm sure there's probably more to it than that, but they're extremely relaxed. They're not tense. They don't tense up. It's actually when we tense up that we're more likely to break more bones. So our emotional life is like that as well. When we go through something, human beings the brain is wired to protect us. It's like comes from way back where we see a saber-toothed tiger and we know I'm in danger. Quick, throw your spear, or run into the cave, or pick up the stick of fire. Like the flight or fight response. So the brain is smart. It tells us there is a threat to you. And the higher functioning of the brain shuts down, like emotional intelligence. And we're just coming into the very primitive part of the mind, which is just like survive, stay alive, big threat. Of course, the problem is that sometimes our brain tricks us, and what happens is with trauma is emotional experiences or harm or challenges that we've experienced that we have not fully processed, like maybe some violence, some harm was done to us. We have not fully processed our emotions around that experience, that act of violence, that time we felt afraid. And that pain is buried in the back of our head, that patterning, you could say, that knot, that karmic knot, that wound. An unhealed wound is a good metaphor, actually. And then when we go into later life and we come across a situation that is similar to that traumatic experience, we get triggered and we overreact. We're not seeing what is really going on. We're back in the past. We're having a flashback. We go into flight or fight, and that's when we probably make mistakes. And I'm not saying I think it's absolutely important to have boundaries and to say no sometimes and to have self-care. But it's also good to know about our trauma and how our trauma can make us see a snake when really there is just a rope hanging from a tree. The story of in the suttas, that when a person in the evening, they see a rope hanging from a tree and they think it's a snake and they freak out and they're having this big reaction, and then they go a bit closer and they see it's just a snake. It's just a rope. Sometimes we do that with people too. We misread people's intentions. In relationships, a lot of relationships go bad because people they have this massive projection onto the other person. You're going to make me happy. You're going to meet all my emotional needs. I mean, it's doomed from the beginning, really, isn't it? Because only you can make yourself happy. You can share happiness with someone else. But in these times, you know, it's quite an intense experience of having all these people die around you, being afraid to go outside, feeling anxious about money, feeling isolated, lonely, you know, having all the things that you normally identify with, that you get validity about, cut off. Suddenly you're just at home with your own mind. You can't go and spend money, and or you could get things online, but it's not quite the same. Your world has shrunk. Your life has become radically more simple, and you're just forced. You have a lot more time, and you're just sitting at home looking at your own mind. In a way, we've become feudal peasants overnight. You know, we can't go beyond the village. We don't have the means to go beyond the village, and we have no certainty about anything apart from the grueling hours and the bad food, of course. Or, you know, we've become monks or nuns overnight, really, because you're locked at home. There's not a lot you can do, kind of in a form of enforced celibacy almost, really. So, and for some of us, this could be extremely challenging. It could trigger feeling trapped, and all kinds of feelings come up. But knowing about trauma, knowing how you get triggered, knowing that you have trauma to work through, is a way that you begin your journey of healing. You know, and when you find out that you've been reacting, you know, you kind of think, why are all my relationships bad? Or why can I never get on in a community? Or why do I always have issues with authority figures? You know, you can look back and you can see, trauma, or, you know, mental formations, mental knots. And a lot of people think, great, I'll meditate, I'll become a Buddhist person, I'll become a Buddhist nun, I'll be flying, free, smooth sailing. Suddenly all my emotional problems will go away overnight, and I'll become this really nice, peaceful person. But that just ain't the deal. The deal is that you've got to lean in and undo those knots. You've got to get your face in the horse poo and turn it over so that it becomes some nice mulch. I don't know what, I think you know what I mean, right? When you turn the horse poo into something with hay and the rotten food, and you put it in with the dirt, and it becomes fertilizer, something really good that you can grow the roses with. So that's the spiritual path. You know, it's not about bypassing from all of these difficult issues. That is the path. That is that process of leaning into your own dukkha, your own suffering, your own messed up, you know, the parts, the places that scare you, the things you'd rather not see, the things you hide from other people. Those are the things that will give you insight. And if you have this resilience, because resilience is what happens when we go through a challenging time. It's the opposite of trauma. Resilience is when we go through a difficult time and we come out the other side and we've become stronger. We've integrated the emotions around it and we've let it go. When we say let go, we don't mean spiritually bypass, which means, you know, pretending it doesn't happen, suppressing your emotions, being in denial. You can Google it because it's quite a big thing, but I think it's actually a really important thing for Buddhists to know, spiritual bypassing. It means basically using spiritual reasons to avoid doing the messy work of looking at your emotions, you know, pretending you're peaceful when really you're in denial. Because the peace of the spiritual path is hard won. It is the fruit that comes after you have done the hard work of gardening and planting all the trees. You don't get the fruit without planting the trees, isn't it? So you work with your emotions, your experience, your trauma. Maybe you need some therapy, you know, maybe you don't. But these things come up in meditation, and you just notice them. You notice them. And you know, that's why sometimes observing the sensation in the body can be a really good way to not get into the storyline, because we tend to create very concrete stories about what happened to us, and we get caught in that story, and then we never feel the feeling, and then we never integrate it. So resilience is the opposite of that. Resilience is moving through a difficult experience, coming out the other side stronger. So that's what we're trying to cultivate in this time. Resilience is a wonderful is a wonderful weapon for the sacred spiritual warrior to face this challenging time. And also, if you have this regular Dharma practice, this inner peace, if you have this, you have a, sometimes in meditation where your mind becomes very peaceful and you just have a sense of being connected with everything. You have a sense of going beyond the limits of your identity. It's so nice to just put down this burden of no, 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 and you have this sense of timelessness, of going beyond race, class, gender, and a flash of openness, when you cultivate a strong basis of peace and joy, joy can be cultivated through working on your paramis, your merit-making perfections. For example, morality, generosity, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. In Tibetan Buddhism, in Theravada, there are 10 paramis, perfections, of someone walking the road of a compassionate person. But another way to develop this this merit, this mental peace, is just really getting into your shamatha, samatha, anapanasati, breath meditation practice, developing mental stability, and doing loving kindness meditation. And also there's a meditation you can do where you think about all the good things you've done in your life, where you rejoice in your own merit. So you're cultivating, you think another meditation you can do is think about the qualities of the Buddha. It's a little weird for Westerners because we're not usually coming from a very faith-based place. But there's a beautiful book about the life of the Buddha by Thich Nhat Hanh called Old Path, White Clouds. And just reading a chapter of that can make you feel, wow, the Buddha was so compassionate and kind. And, he was so skillful to teach everyone he met in a really different way. He was quite a revolutionary. And by these kind of meditations, you develop a mental stability, you develop mental strength and resilience to the strong ground that can process difficult emotions and suffering. Sometimes I find Buddhist teachers make this mistake of hitting people over the head with suffering. Like, well, what did you expect? Life is suffering, everything's impermanent, and therefore nothing matters, and your feelings don't matter, and just suck it up, And it's true that life is hard and we are going to die and everything's impermanent. But that doesn't mean that relative things don't matter, that your feelings don't matter, that happiness isn't happiness, even if it's temporary, that well-being isn't important, that, exercise isn't important. It just means that those things are conditioned and can't give you lasting satisfaction. But you're not really ready to fully embrace your suffering and transform it unless you have a basis of self-esteem and kindness for yourself and a sense of spaciousness. Cultivating a heart of peace, a sense of spaciousness, is really important foundation to be able to then do the hard work of facing all the slings and arrows that life will shoot at you. Yeah. And those slings and arrows made Hamlet so unhappy, didn't it? Like he was like, to be or not to be, that is the question. But the to be or not to be is not the question. To be present or not be present is the question. Are you going to turn up with kindness? Are you going to kindly undo those karmic knots so you don't suffer anymore, so you uncover the joy that is our human right, I would say, our human inheritance, and so that you don't pass the trauma, the dysfunction onto future generations? Are you going to live in a way that preserves the planet, that gives everybody justice and equality and well-being? Or are you just going to be a selfish so-and-so who the earth is probably better off without and you never really enjoyed your life? I mean, it's not really a choice, is it? So I've talked about resilience. I've talked about cultivating joy and peace as a foundation to be able to deal with suffering. I've talked about this briefly, the 6 perfections. I have had quite a challenging life. My father died when I was 14, and I became a street kid because I was depressed and I wasn't getting along with my mother. I was suicidal, and I just couldn't stop thinking, what is the meaning of life? So I left home and went in search of the meaning of life. But, you know, in the meantime, a lot of things happened. You can imagine, as a homeless teenage girl, a lot of things can happen, like rape and sexual abuse and poverty. You know, sleeping on the street can be very tough. I saw the worst side of humanity, but I also saw some good things too. And I think because I really had this fire inside me to seek out the meaning of life, I always could kind of pick myself up and keep going. But that doesn't mean that a lot of those things didn't traumatize me. You know, I certainly have many issues about what happened to me. And then I went to India, age 17, and India was a very different place then. It was very much like a Dickens novel, you know, of Oliver Twist. Life was very hard then. And I saw, you know, especially in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha got enlightened, which is one of the intersections of heaven and hell on this planet, I think. People are very poor there, and the government is extremely corrupt. Not all places in India are like this. You know, India is full of amazing history and beautiful architecture and so much rich culture. But in this particular place in India, people are very poor. You know, girls are married at 14, 15, pop out 10 kids, dead by 45. People live in cow dung shacks. You know, anybody who stands up for justice, any poor person, will probably end up lynched to death. And then on the other extreme, there is the 6-foot high barbed wire fence and the marble enclave with air conditioning of the ashram. You know, all these so-called Buddhist ashrams or monasteries in Bodh Gaya. And I just remember seeing, you know, some pretty shocking things. Like when I went to India 20 years ago, it was very different to now. I was continuously sexually harassed and groped. One guy tried to rape me. But I did find what I was looking for in the sense that, I mean, life is just more vibrant there somehow, maybe because life and death is so in your face. And people struggle, you know, and they struggle for sensible things. Like, they don't struggle for a double garage and a renovation, like something they don't really need. They struggle to feed their family and to get enough just to live for the next day, which in a way their life has more meaning than the things that we think we need that we don't really need, that we spend our lives working for. And then, you know, over time, I started a charity for ex-untouchable Indian Buddhists, who basically are people previously enslaved by the caste system, you know, a bit like the African American people were in America 150 years ago. They were, yeah. So people often say, you know, I couldn't live in a slum. How did you do that? How could you cope with that? It's 47 degrees in summer. You see children dying all the time from diarrhea and stuff, but you also see a lot of joy, and you see people really knowing what's important in life. You see them being kind to each other, because when people don't have money to go shopping or to buy things or go on holiday, they invest in community, they invest in each other. They go around to each other's houses and make jokes, and, you know, all the kids like do the latest Hindi movie moves. They're actually very talented dancers and singers, and, you know, they just invest in each other. So there's also a lot of joy and love. I felt loved as a nun there in a way that I never felt loved in the West. You know, in the West, people are like, you know, just go away, you freak. But in in India, everybody's like, oh, you're holy. Wow, please bless us. I know that I'm not holy and that I, can't really bless any or save anyone, but, it's nice to just have someone rejoice in your existence instead of think of you as a weirdo. But I think the thing that really did give me the resilience to stay there and to help those people was, I empathized with them. I could see that they were suffering a great deal, and I became part of their community and started to see the problems that they had and knew that I could do something about it because I had white privilege. And I asked them what they wanted, and they wanted to educate their daughters and educate their children. And they also wanted, healthcare and minimum wage and all of those things. But I did what I could, and we started a girls' home. But what really kept me going through, like my foster daughter died of an operation we organized. Lots of heavy stuff has happened there. There's like a 70% domestic violence rate. But what is really, and there have been times where I was just burnt out and traumatized and I just had to go away. And I was so fed up with the way rich government employees brutalize and the police brutalize poor people and squash them, But what kept me going was this idea of bodhicitta, of compassion, of just knowing that happiness is not a personal matter, it's a communal matter, that everything we have comes from others, that we are a meeting of so many rivers, so many strands, like a rug made of so many strands of wool. We have non-self elements like food, like the farmer who grows our food, like the earth, like the rain, like the sun, like our parents, like culture, like teachers who taught us to read and write, like the activists who fought so women could get the vote, like the activists who fought so that poor children wouldn't work in factories. Without all of those people, I wouldn't be who I am today. Take away one of those things: no sun, no me; no rain, no me; no food, no me; no woman in Bangladesh or China making my robes to keep me warm in winter, no me. So I suddenly realized I was, when you really go deep on the spiritual path, you see you're intimately connected with everything else. And you let go of holding on to yourself so tight. And you develop a heart as wide as the world. And you realize that truly taking care of yourself is taking care of others as well. Others are your second self. And that, happiness is not a personal matter, it's a communal matter. Because if we have a lot, but the people around us are starving, we don't have security, we don't have a happy society. Taking care of others, investing in society, having equality, having an end of racism and sexism and extreme poverty benefits us all. Having a clean planet, having addressing climate crisis, having democratic, proper just political systems benefits us all. So that idea of interconnectedness and that compassion that comes through understanding that everybody is going through exactly what I do. It gave me a fire inside, I'd love to benefit all beings. I'd love to relieve them of their suffering. And just, also coming back to a sense of what is the meaning of my life? What do I most deeply value? Viktor Frankl, who is a wonderful, like a psychiatrist, I think, who went through the Holocaust and lost everything. His wife died, he lost everything. He suffered so much, but he wasn't bitter at the end of it. It was pretty amazing, actually. He just said, don't search for happiness, search for meaning, because meaning is the vanguard and everything else follows. If you search for meaning, if you have a sense of doing something bigger than yourself, of being of service, doing something good, then happiness, success, money will come as well. And for me, that was the key thing. Like, why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? And that fire inside to do something good, that fire inside of bodhicitta, the wish to free all beings from suffering, including myself, kept me going, made me keep walking on. But I've also come to see, I'm sorry, I think I'm going over time a little bit. I'll end soon. I'm Tibetan Buddhist, we talk a lot. That's my excuse, I'm sticking to it. What was I going to say? yeah, I'm coming to see that, activism, social work is not sustainable without a deep sense of peace and self-care. And that's, and Western life is so frantic, So we need, even in this time, this is your chance to do retreat. You're all like, what am I going to do today? Should I get out of my pajamas? Oh God. And here's your chance. You always say, I'd love to be a nun, da da da, but da da da. Well, here's your chance. You're a monk or a nun. You're stuck at home. You've got no money. Welcome to life as a nun. When you ordain as a nun, it looks so nice from the outside, but often you have hardly any money. You have someone telling you what to do. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's kind of, it can be infantilizing sometimes, Everybody's judging you like, oh, I heard that you had an ice cream. You went to the corner shop and you had an ice cream. Bad nun. Or, just you said something outrageous. Nuns should be peaceful. Nuns shouldn't have emotion. Everybody's suddenly judging you. You're public property. You're supposed to be more enlightened simply because you're wearing red. So yeah, you've got to just kind of come into this this spacious, deathless mind, and invest in that peace and contemplation. And then hopefully from that, a sense of empathy, a sense of developing the 4 Brahma Viharas of wishing all beings to be happy, wishing yourself to be happy, wishing them not to suffer. You naturally develop compassion. May all beings be free of suffering. I myself will do something about that as much as I can. You can't save the whole world, but you may not be able to do great things, but you can do small things with great love. And I just started with a few posts on Facebook. This girl needs a school uniform. And then, it became this whole big charity that helps 2,000 people a year. So this is your time. This is your cave, your COVID cave, to think about, what do I most deeply value? How can I make changes in my life? Do we really want to go back to living like headless chickens? Now we have more time to meditate. We have more time for family. What could be the purpose of our lives beyond rampant consumerism that's destroying the planet? And there are a lot of people right now who need help. There are a lot of people practically starving, daily wage people in India. You could sponsor a child in India or Africa. There's so many things you can do. There's lots of charities that need drivers to take food to elderly people. There's lots of things you can do. You can start a garden in the back of your house, a community garden, So your life matters. You can make a difference. Cultivate some inner peace. This too shall pass. But this is our chance. This is our pause to think about what is going to be the world after the brave new world. Hopefully not the one Aldous Huxley talked about. What is the brave new world? Because to change, it only takes 3.5% of the population to want to do it. So I think we can. I think that's probably enough of my spiel. So if you have any questions, we can